Hey everyone, you're listening to the Tea with Tanya podcast, and I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose. I'm a public health professional by day and your average tea-loving millennial and content creator by night. My goal for this podcast is to share public health stories, self-love and wellness tips, to educate and empower, and to promote positive living. This podcast is here to serve you. Join me in the tea tasting room to see what I have brewing for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tea with Tanya podcast. Before I get into today's episode, I just want to really say thank you to each and every one of you who take the time out to listen to my podcast weekly. You guys really, you leave a review, you come into my DMs or my WhatsApp and you give me your feedback, and it does not go unnoticed, and I really appreciate it. It motivates me to keep going. So I want to say thank you. I feel like I record these episodes now just so I can wait and see what your feedback is going to be. So thank you guys for listening and for showing the support. I'm almost at 500 downloads, and I am, it's a small feat for some people, but this is a big feat or a huge feat for me, really and truly. So I want to thank you guys for really and truly supporting me weekly. Now, in today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about, what it's like to say no and setting boundaries. So more or less the power of saying no and setting boundaries for ourselves and just when it comes to people. This is honestly something that I'm learning daily. I feel like, setting boundaries and saying no is a form of self-care. It brings me peace, and I'm on a quest to find genuine peace. And I am no longer in the business of pleasing people or explaining the reason why I don't do certain things anymore. So as you know, I'm an advocate for therapy. I started therapy back in August, and let me tell you, it is the best thing that has ever happened to me. So I'm going to always, sprinkle it here a little bit on this podcast because, like I told you guys in one of my episodes, it's a form of self-care for me. But, since going to therapy, one thing that has come up quite often is that, we say often, when in fact it should be often. I forgot what class it was, but anyway, quite often, the need for setting healthy boundaries comes up in our session with me and my therapist. I feel like as I got older, I would always hear about, setting boundaries, you need to do this, you need to do that. But, I never thought it was something I would need to do, which is crazy to think that, why would I not want to set boundaries when it comes to my life, especially with the way in which things would have happened to me or would have gone in the past. But for me now, even though I'm still learning boundaries really and truly, they are the rules and guidelines we have to set, you and I, guys, we have to set for how people deal with us. We often say, we are the one, or we can tell someone, or we can encourage someone, or whatever is it that we do, we can tell a person how we want to be treated. And because we may not speak up, I'm raising my hand here because that used to be me too. Because we do not speak up and we allow these people to do certain things to us, they think that, okay, I can continue treating Tanya this way because she's not saying anything. So it's obvious that she either likes it or, just doesn't give a damn. I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to treat her this way because she's not rebutting or anything. And I feel that that's why it's important for us to set boundaries. So what exactly is a boundary, or what are boundaries? And always doing some form of research. So I found this article on positivepsychology.com, and it says, boundaries can be physical or emotional, and they can range from being loose to rigid, with healthy boundaries often falling somewhere in between. And for me these days, I need to set or build better boundaries. This is how I determine how others treat me. Because guys, I've said this probably before on my blog, but I've had people, not necessarily, let me just be honest. I've had people treat me bad. I've had people not show up in moments where I really needed them. And, I still I would give them multiple chances. I would just complain to maybe some other friend, or I would just keep it in my head and, talk to my mirror, or just take it on in a way that, it would start stressing me out and become toxic or unhealthy when it came to my mental health, because, these are the things that I was allowing in my life. And when I sit and think about it at times, I realized that, I was really a people pleaser, and saying no, even though I know I needed to, was never an option. I'm going to read something that I found in my journal that I wrote a few months back. And it says, I don't like saying no to others because it made me feel, or makes me feel, unreliable. It makes me feel sad or uncomfortable. Not being there for others because it makes me feel like a failure to those counting on me. It makes me feel like a bad person. Guys, and these are words that came directly from a journal entry that I had a few months ago. And I'm like, wow, you know, 'cause sometimes, you know, you journal and you go back, you can just find like where you were, what headspace you were in months before. And I was like, wow, those words really came from me, Tanya. Like, girl, what's wrong with you? But I remember, you know, because I'm this person, I'm going to support you, you know, especially when it comes to the content creation. I'm going to support you because I know what it's like to get that engagement. I know what it's like to have people support you. So I'm going to genuinely support you. And it was just never reciprocated. You know, I was always available for people. And I realized that recently, too, that people are just honestly not afraid to say no to me. And, you know, when they would say no, I often realized that, you know, I would get offended or I feel some type of way. I'm like, who are you to say no to me or say no to a favor, that I'm asking for? And I used to feel real bad. I used to get in my feelings, got like deep, deep, deep in my feelings. People were not afraid to tell me no. And I used to be big mad when they said no. And I was like, wow, you know, I'm always readily available. I'm always dropping, you know, what I am doing to cater to you. And you're not even afraid to tell me no without no explanation. It's just no. So I've just been trying to, you know, start saying no and just standing in my no, and it is what it is, you know. On my last episode when I had Nikima on, we said we have to stop doing things for others, you know, put people in some categories, you know what I'm saying? Because really and truly, guys, when we have lack of boundaries, and I heard this somewhere, when we have lack of boundaries, it tends to let us lose trust in our judgment or question ourselves. And I know that when I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's a word, because that described me. It's like, wow, am I making the right decision? You know, I'm just doubting or just, you know, these different things. And, you know, something that my therapist said to me, you know, she's like, you know, you need to learn to, before you say yes to anything, at least try to take 3 things off of my plate or my to-do list. And I was like, interesting. And I feel like, you know, for me, I have done things in the past that would have put me on the back burner just to please other people. And then in the end, it came back and it had an impact, a negative impact on me mentally, physically, you know, even educationally, to be quite honest with the decisions that I've made. So every time I'm like, somebody asks me something, I'm like, you know what, before I can say yes, I have to make sure I can take 3 things off of my plate. Or sometimes, even if there's nothing, I'm just going to say no because I'm not in that headspace right now. I want to say here, I feel like I'm going on and on, but, you know, I'm just speaking my truth today, guys. How people react to you, how they react or respond to you setting boundaries, let me tell you, it is none of your business. I'm a big fan of Sarah Jakes Roberts, right? And she's a great motivational speaker, you know, Christian leader, these different things. And she has a podcast, it's called Woman Evolve. And she always talks about, you know, I'm part of the Mind Your Business ministry. People mind our business, you know, XYZ, which is so fun. But yeah, I say I'm part of her Mind Your Business ministry because I said this before on the podcast. Whenever I step out of not minding my business, guys, I oftentimes end up in problems. Like the minute I step out and just go against the grain and, you know, what is gossiping or just not minding my business, guys, I always end up in trouble. And I'm like, you know what? No, I made a decision at least 4 years ago that I'm going to continue to mind my business. No, don't get me wrong. The business come to me. I'm going to take it, but I'm going to still mind that business. You know what I mean? I'm not going to step out of line. Yeah, you know, how they respond to when we're making our boundaries now, it's none of our business. You know, stand in your truth. Because, I mean, you can be more at peace, and in turn, you can create better relationships, you know, with your family, friends, co-workers, and partner. And I realize, you know, in those moments when I sit and I think, and I'm like, you know, these people, they weren't afraid to say no to me. That was them setting their boundaries. You know, who am I to be upset because they said no? You know, they're not obligated to do anything for me or, you know, run to my aid or just drop everything and come and help me. You know, I feel like that's where sometimes we often get things wrong. Like we think sometimes we have a sense of entitlement, to be honest. And I feel like sometimes I do have that because I feel like because I'm the person that's always there for most people, I tend to expect that they're going to reciprocate that same or that very thing that I'm doing for them or I would have done for them. So, but yeah, when we set boundaries, you know, we tend to develop or create better relationships, you know, because that person, you know what, this is, you know, they will just know what to do and what not to do. And it just open the line of communication. And it honestly makes life so much more easier because I realize that I've been doing that. I've been doing that in the past. Like, I've had to learn my limits. I've had to just say no. And, you know, so it could just be for the smallest thing what I just, one, was not in the mind or didn't have the mental capacity to do anything. 2, was just not in the mood. And that's okay too. So before, I used to say no, then I'll give a long epistle as to why I'm saying no. And then me doing that, it just ends up to me saying yes. And it was just like, it was not healthy. You know, so I had to get to a place where I had to say no and keep it moving. I'm not going to lie. I'm Not all the way there with my goals as far as my boundary setting, but I'm better now with speaking up if something is bothering me, or I'm better at, if I'm saying no, standing in my no. Sometimes if I do give an explanation, that's fine, but the answer is going to still be no. Sometimes I do feel bad for saying no as well, but I feel like, it's for the betterment of myself. And if I'm not, I can't pour from an empty cup. There have been times when I've poured from an empty cup, and guys, when I tell you, you have a juice or water, whatever, in a cup, whatever, and you can, the little ice is melting, and you can pour that cup, and you can still see, you can get that last piece of draining. Well, let me tell you guys, I was pouring from the cup that was so empty that there was not even any draining for you to even try to get that last drip. That's the many times I've poured from a dry, empty glass or cup. But to help with boundary setting or building, I'm going to share an article that I found. And I found this a few months ago, when I first started my therapy, and we were talking about I need to set healthy boundaries. And I'll make sure I put the link in the description to that article as well, so you can read and, see if it can be helpful for you. But it's called 10 Ways to Build and Preserve Better Boundaries. And it was written by someone called Margarita Tartakovsky. I hope I'm saying her name right. She offers some insight into building better boundaries and maintaining them. There are 10 of them, and I'm going to read them really quickly, guys, but I am going to put the link in the description. But she offers some insight into building better boundaries and maintaining them. And of course, I'm all about sharing. If something that speaks to me, I'm pretty sure it'll speak to you guys from time to time. And it says, the first one is name your limits. You can't set good boundaries if you're unsure of where you stand. So identify your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual limits. Consider what you can tolerate and accept and what makes you feel uncomfortable or stressed. Those feelings help us identify what our limits are. I like that. The other one is tune into your feelings. Ooh, that's a good one. The author, she has observed 2 key feelings in others that are red flags or cues that we're letting go of our boundaries. Discomfort and resentment. She suggested thinking of these feelings on a continuum from 1 to 10. 6 to 10 is in the higher zone. If you're at the higher end of this continuum during an interaction or in a situation, ask yourself, what is causing this? What is it about the interaction or the person's expectation that is bothering me? Resentment usually comes from being taken advantage of or not appreciated. Ooh, child, I can speak to this. It's often a sign that we're pushing ourselves either beyond our own limits because we feel guilty and want to be a good daughter or wife or friend, for instance, or someone else is imposing their expectation, views, or values on us. When someone acts in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's a cue to us that they may be violating or crossing a boundary. Now, guys, can you believe that? Be direct. With some people, maintaining healthy boundaries doesn't require a direct and clear-cut dialogue. Usually, this is the case if people are similar in their communication styles, views, personalities, etc. With others, such as those who have a different personality or cultural background, you'll need to be more direct about your boundaries. Number 4, give yourself permission. Ooh. Fear, guilt, and self-doubt are big potential pitfalls. We might fear the other person's response if we set and enforce our boundaries. We might feel guilty by speaking up or saying no to a family member or friend. Many believe that they should be able to cope with a situation or say yes because they are a good daughter or son, even though they feel drained or taken advantage of. We might wonder if we even deserve to have boundaries in the first place. Child, let me tell you, I had to give myself permission to say no and stand in that no. Number 5 is practice self-awareness. Again, boundaries are all about honing in on your feelings and honoring them. If you notice yourself slipping and not sustaining your boundaries, ask yourself, what's changed? What am I doing? What is the other person doing? What do I have control over? Number 6 is consider your past and your present. How you were raised along with your role in your family can become additional obstacles in setting and preserving boundaries. If you held the role of a caretaker, you learn to focus on others, letting yourself be drained emotionally or physically. Ignoring your own needs might have become the norm for you. Also, think about the people you surround yourself with. Are the relationships reciprocal? Is there a healthy give and take? Girl, let me tell you, people, I can relate to number 6 for sure. Number 7, make self-care a priority. You guys know I did an episode a few weeks back about prioritizing self-care, and this is number 7 on ways you can build and preserve your boundaries. It says, make self-care a priority, which involves giving yourself permission to put yourself first. When we do this, our need and motivation to set boundaries become so much stronger. Number 8 is to seek support. If you're having a hard time with boundaries, seek some sort of support. Whether it's support from a group, church, counseling, coaching, or even just good friends. With friends or family, you can even make it a priority with each other to practice setting boundaries together and hold each other accountable. I've done something similar to this with my best friend, and it's, as my father liked to tell me, I learned the hard way. So even though she's tried with me, sometimes I still just go and do my own thing. But, I've come a long way, and through therapy, I've been able to, work on building better boundaries. Number 9, be assertive. And of course, that's not enough to create boundaries. We actually have to follow through. Even though we know intellectually that people aren't mind readers, we still expect others to know what hurts us. That is a fact, the author said. Since they don't, it's important to assertively communicate with the other person when they've crossed a boundary, of course, in a respectful way. And number 10, it says start small. Like any new skill, assertively communicating your boundaries takes a lot of practice. The author decided, you should start with a small boundary that isn't threatening to you, and then incrementally increase to more challenging boundaries. Build upon your success, and at first, try not to take on something that feels overwhelming. As the author said in the end of her article, setting boundaries take courage, practice, and support. And remember that is a skill that you can master. Now, guys, I'm happy I did read those. I hope that this episode, gave you such an insight about, standing, the power of saying no and setting boundaries for yourself. But before I go, basically what I said was when it came to setting boundaries with other people, but we need to learn to set boundaries for ourselves. And that can mean and look so many different ways. For me right now, these days, it's something as simple like this, like number 10 said, start small. For me, it's a situation where I limit my time on social media, because I know sometimes I can allow social media to cloud certain judgment that I make, and then it also make me decide, what, I'm not trusting my judgment anymore because of the content that I'm consuming on social media. Decide how much time, like for me, like I told you guys in episode 1, I think it was, or episode 2, I started this thing where I'm only giving myself 2 hours on social media. I started out, like I told you, I'm not there at my growth yet, and then I found myself, wow, 2 hours went by, and by midday, I've already used up my 2 hour, time on social media. And then, I had to add 1 more hour. Then I was up to 3 hours. I'm like, no, what, girl, you got to get disciplined. Like, what's the whole point of trying to limit yourself and set these boundaries for yourself like this? And you're out here adding on more time to the amount of time you were going to be on social media. So I decided to, limit 2 hours a day. And it's been working. Some days I don't use the full 2 hours. Some days I do. And, my phone locks me out. It's like, do you need more time? And I'm like, no, you know what? You gotta create a healthy boundary. And for me, like I said, I know how social media can get to me sometimes. So that's something, a boundary I'm setting for myself. Another thing that I'm doing is my time. I'm setting boundaries with my time. I'm no longer going to be easily accessible to some people. I'm going to put my phone down. Like for me these days, the last few weeks, I've been not necessarily going to bed early. There are days when I'm in the bed by 7, I'll give you that. But I've been putting my phone down between the hours of 7 and 9. I'm putting my phone down. Well, I'll say 8 and 9, because 7 is a tad bit early. I'm still talking to my parents or whatever. But between 8 and 9, I am not on the phone. I'm either plugging in that phone to charge, I'm watching TV, I'm reading a book, or I'm just not on my phone. I feel like, unless I do leave, because, even though your phone is on vibrate, you can still hear that vibration. I do leave my phone, or I leave my ear cupped, so just in case if someone is calling me, it's an emergency, especially given the times that we're in, we need to be, in a sense, accessible, just in case we have family members or close friends that we need to communicate with. But I feel like for me, in that sense, I go to sleep knowing that I would have spoken to the people that I need to talk to that day. If it's a situation where there's an emergency, I have my sisters who I live with, and the people who are relevant or important that matter to me, they have my sisters, phone number, or where they can contact them, even on social media. So I feel like if I am setting that boundary by not using my phone after 8 p.m. at night, and something would have happened, then I know if it really is important, they can reach out to my sisters or whatever family member and get me. That's kind of a way that I'm doing when it comes to setting boundaries for myself. I have to limit myself at my screen time. Because I find that when I'm on my phone all night and then I'm trying to go to bed, it's a situation where I can't sleep at night. So yeah, guys, that's just the end of today's episode. That's a little bit into, setting healthy boundaries and saying no. I'll probably go in depth more as far as, the whole setting boundaries in another episode. But that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I try to keep it short and sweet. And of course, before I go, guys, I don't have anything that I'm diving into right now. I'm still reading the same book, but I'll put the link to that book again that I'm reading I do want to say thank you again for listening, for tuning in. But guys, please make sure that you are liking the episode and you are leaving a review on Apple Podcasts for sure. And that will make sure that, my podcast get more views. Well, I'm saying views, but more downloads and these different things. So make sure you guys at the end of every episode, leave that review, leave a comment for me on Apple Podcasts. Again, guys, this episode was all about taking or standing in the power of saying no and setting healthy boundaries for ourselves and with the people that we have around us. And I did read an article that spoke about 10 ways to build and preserve better boundaries. We mentioned name your limits, tune into your feelings, be direct, give yourself permission, practice self-awareness, consider your past and present, make self-care a priority, that's a fact, seek support, be assertive, and of course, start small. Just say no. And like my therapist tells me, no is a complete sentence. No, period. No, full stop. Don't ask me why, or don't ask me, stop, guys. Don't even think about dropping what is it that you're doing for somebody else, because they won't do it for you, especially when they won't do it for you. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Be sure to like, make sure you leave a review, and I'll see you in the tea tasting room next week. Thank you. Have a good day.